Hello, hello everybody. Thanks a lot, Emily. I'm Dr. Carmine Galasso. I'm one of the co-lead of Work Package 3. I'm sharing this presentation with Dr. Sukiman Nurdin from Tadulako University, Dr. Yunita Idris from TDMRC, and my colleague Professor Tiziana Rossetto at UCL. Sukiman, if you want to start, please.
Okay.
If you can
Thank you, Dr. Carmine. I will start first for all of my colleagues. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning in UK and good evening for Indonesian who attends this meeting. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Your Excellence, the principal of this research, Prof. Helena Jove, and Rector and Vice Rector of Tadulako University and Siak Kuala University, and Dean of Tadulako and Siak Kuala University, and especially the Honorable of David Price, Vice Provost of Research in UCL, and their our college and who participates as co-investigator and alternates who participated in this meeting. Okay, in our chapter 3, Work Package 3 will be focused in infrastructure resilient recovery. This collaboration with my colleagues from UCL, Dr. Carmine Galasso and Prof. Tiziana Rossetto, and Dr. Yunita from UNSIA, and myself from Tadulako University. Okay, as we have to know, before we intend to elaborate and to go through to the research, I want to speak about the story or overview of how school condition been built before earthquake in Indonesia. First of all, as we know, there was 2,336 school buildings have been affected or destroyed or unsafe across Donggala, Palu, and Sigi. There was a huge number of the school buildings who affected by the 2018 of the earthquake. About 10% of the children's side were afraid to go to school since the earthquake and tsunami, and 50% of parents didn't want to send their children to school after the disaster. So household with children not attending school reported that main reason was the school had been damaged or destroyed, about 30%, or was no longer safe, about 23%. This research was did by Net Assessment, JNR, and was reported on December 2008. Okay, next slide.
You can move by yourself.
Okay.
Be able to control the slide. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Dr. Carmine, I can control it.
Yeah, you should be able to control it.
Okay, thank you.
Try now. I can move to next slide.
Okay, you can move slide. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes, sometimes problem. Okay. Okay. I want to offer for you how to school by have been construction in this region. Yeah, not just in the region, but generally in Indonesia. I was separated in 4 or 5 age. First of all, in 1960s to 1970s, approximately 60% of Indonesian schools are constructed in massive residential infrastructures. We cite IMPRES in Indonesia. This program funded by full by the central government. Understanding of building codes and hazard was low and corruption rampant, leading to poor site selection and construction quality. This time was massive time of Indonesian government build the school, especially in rural area. Okay. Then, and secondly, I was separated in 1919 to 20,000. We recognize the monumental challenge of building, operation, and maintenance, repairing and retrofitting school in various states of disrepair across thousands of islands. The government decentralized. In the festival they centralized, and now in 2019 to 20 they decentralized education management down to the community level. So we usually cite BOS, central government establish a block grant called the school operation fund. We cite BOS with support from the World Bank, by the World Bank. That's mean World Bank give Indonesia budget to build a school with the name of BOS, allowing school, manage and committee to directly receive and manage funding provided by the national government. So the building in this era built by the names of committee. Who's the committee? Committee is the group of the people who still have a connection with the school, like the parents of the student and the people around of the school who can join to the committee. As a block grant, the funding was flexible and allowed the committee to spend money as they saw fit. Okay, and the system was intended to allow the school committee to operate as the school implement unit. Okay, next slide. Okay. Then, furthermore, in 2000s, after learning that 70% of 250,000 schools in Indonesia are in disaster risk area, the government launched the new program in this 20s, especially to increase technical assistance for disaster risk education. They also adopt regulation to increase the hazard resistance of school infrastructure. Even though the government know about some of the problems with school building, they didn't know specific. The Ministry of Education and Culture contracted a private company to determine the extent of damage and disrepair of Indonesian school building. After a year of surveys, the government learned that one-third of the total school, more than 89,000, fell into heavily damaged and medium damaged category. That's the result of the 2000s, did by the consultant. In 2011, the Minister of Finance changed the existing Special Allocation Fund, we cite DAC, to help maintain education building. They drastically increased the portion of the budget allotted to physical expenditure and allocated funds according to damage level and student enrollment. School management committees can use this fund to build a school or repair existing one as they see fit. Okay, next slide. Okay. How critical thinking of the school construction process in Indonesia from the 4 decades, from the technical capacity and construction management. For the construction is now responsible for the school management committees. They had to hire their own contractors and subcontractors to help them build a school or retrofitting existing ones. So the contractors and the subcontractors not connected with the government anymore. But in practice, usually in the local practice, subcontractors usually usually is proposed by the government, local government. Yeah. Committees do receive some assistance from the Minister of Education, engineers, to oversee a project, but they don't always have the capacity to implement the construction project, or nor the appropriate knowledge to prioritize school safety. As a result, DAC funds have been spent returning building to their original condition, rather than improving structural component to make them safer. That's what happened in Indonesia. Then public sector coordination. The Minister of Public Works is responsible for writing and enforcing the building codes, including design review and construction inspection of the school. With so many infrastructure tasks to supervise, they rarely perform through the checks, especially if the school is single story. In addition, public works officials rotate between departments to reduce corruption, but with the fast turnover rate, officials rarely develop sufficient experience for thoroughly overseeing school projects. Under the current DAC fund, the responsibility to finance the supervision of school projects rests on local government. That's the problem. Because the local government finance supervision, its unique local political, economic, and influence the construction cost, potentially compromising quality assurance and safety. And usually the contractors chosen by the local government in practice, not by the committee actually. Noting these funding and capacity issues, the Minister of Education provides a special portion of money for quality supervision for each school. Currently, this fund is only applicable for school construction directly financed by the Minister of Education, and not for construction who's seen for the DAC fund. That's a little bit difficulty of the committee as well. Okay, next. Yeah, the last one I want to critical thinking about construction speed. Yeah, this is very problem. To compound this challenge, the speed at which school management committee must spin DAC fund has pressure school committee to implement project faster than they are capable. Usually, they just have a limited time to build the school and to use all of the budget. Even time is just 2 or 3 months, they have to spend the budget. Special allocation fund must be completed in the 3 months to retrieve another allocation of money across all sectors. Other departments relying on DAX fund for education material. My precious school to finish their work within just 3 months funding windows, so the funds their sector will not be delayed. Yeah, it's very strict. If they just more than 3 months, the rest of the budget will be back to the government. That's the problem. They have to finish it, then they have to construct the project of the building very fast without any concern about the quality, about the structure, safer. That's the problem usually.
Thanks a lot, Sukiman.
Dr. Carmen, you can continue.
Yes, so Dr. Yunita Idris will now illustrate the structure of the work package. Thanks a lot, Sukiman, for this great background.
You're welcome.
Yunita, if you can unmute yourself.
Dr. Yunita.
Maybe Yunita, I'll share the slides and I remove the slides for you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, there's a technical problem. Thank you, Dr. Sukiman and Dr. Carmines Galasso for giving me a time for a briefly explanation about what we will going to do with work package 3. So mainly there are two tasks for the work package 3 about the investigating exposure characteristic and physical vulnerability modeling of school infrastructure in Palu or maybe in Central Sulawesi, and then we're going to have the next task, which is about the investigating resilience and improving physical solution that involve in activities of assessment of typical vulnerability and vulnerability reduction measure of each structure. I think I need the next one. Let's see. So to start with, we're going to have develop the school typology and the damage. Then that we have from the preliminary survey that had been done by TDMRC and EVIT in 2018. And then we found that there are two main typologies for school building, which are confined masonry for the single-story building, and then reinforced concrete structures for the school building that have like more than a single-story building. And we also developed, so I just jump up to the school distribution map, and then we also develop the school typology, and then we developed the school damage distribution into two different, so for every location, we will have three different map for the school damage distribution for elementary school, for junior high school, and for senior high school. And the map of the school damage include the information of the level of the building's story and also the level of damage. And most of the data that we taken from the BNPB, and also from the based on the preliminary survey, we also identify the typical damage of each typical construction, which can be like conclude for the out of plane of the confined masonry structures that cause the decreasing capacity of the wall to carry the load, then followed by the roof collapse. And also for the in-plane failure that cause cracks that going through the spandrel and the tie columns, which could cause. However, the data is insufficient to come up with the characteristics of damage that could be happen in the multi-hazard scenario. So further analysis and further investigation is really important. So that's why that's why we include that in the activities of the work package 3. So further explanation for this project and for the aim and activities in the work package 3 will be presented by Dr. Carmina Galasso. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Junita. As Junita just said, so empirical data are not enough to build reliable vulnerability model for those school buildings in Palu. So what we are planning to do together with Junita and Tiziana and our collaborators is to develop a multi-level framework where we essentially start. So this is successfully built on a previous project that we carried out together with the MRC, Inspire, funded by the British Council. And the idea was to start with a rapid visual survey through a mobile app that we developed within the previous project, together with local partners in Indonesia. Then based on the results from the rapid visual survey, we can define an archetype school building for which we can conduct advanced nonlinear analysis for multiple hazard, and based on that, we can provide recommendation, for instance, in terms of retrofit of those schools, but also in terms of improve design and build back better for future schools. And really a key component of this work package is capacity building with local partners. As I said, I'll go fast on this, but we will develop some of those very advanced numerical tools, some developed at UCL by Tiziana and her collaborators within previous project, that are really state-of-the-art approaches for tsunami modeling, of vulnerability modeling of buildings, and we will use fragility and vulnerability type of models to recommend different type of retrofit alternatives, and also we will use multi-criteria decision making to look at different criteria and to really identify the best performing alternative. Tiziana, if you want to say something more on the
Thank you. Beyond just the sort of interventions on the physical structures, which sometimes can be expensive, but we also know that there is a significant risk to life from non-structural elements, so falling objects, etc. And so we'll be also holistically looking at these as part of the intervention recommendations we'll be conducting. Gavin? Can you next slide, please? Yes. Yeah. So we have a long history of working in different communities, providing training on different aspects of physical vulnerability, from surveying buildings to conducting analyses. So what we are going to do is provide training sessions and workshops for local engineers and communities, and also integrate some of our approaches or techniques and knowledge, hopefully into educational campaigns to be integrated within some of the school curricula. Thank you.